Introducing the sound era, talking, singing, and dead children. This is M.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, Greg.
Welcome to Seen and Heard.
Thank you.
This is the podcast all about the sight and sound greatest films of all time list. I'm Greg.
I'm Jackie.
As we just said. Yeah, if you haven't joined us before, we're still working off of the 2012 critics list. We're down to our last 10, I think less than 10 films.
Right. And that's the sight and sound list.
Yeah, the sight and sound list. And once we finish the 2012 critics list, we will move on to the 2022 critics list and fill in the gaps. I feel like before we start this episode, though, we should acknowledge
A lot's happened.
We've been gone a couple of weeks due to unforeseen circumstances, the LA fires, which have ravaged our city. We're both fine.
Yeah.
Our houses and apartments did not burn down.
Our studio is good.
Our studio is good, but we know lots of people who did lose their homes. And I think it's one of those things where, not to start the episode on a dour mood, but...
I mean, it's a dour movie.
Yeah, that's true. It's fitting. But this is pretty unprecedented in terms of natural disasters.
Definitely.
And even, the last big thing to happen to LA was the 94 Northridge earthquake. And that in terms of the damage that these fires have caused is exponentially higher than, it's huge.
Yeah, I've heard
compared
it's the
to the earthquake.
most expensive natural disaster in LA. Or I heard it, don't quote me on this.
In the country.
I heard the country.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, yeah. And, I'm from here. I've lived here all my life, and never anything like this. So, well, I'm glad that we're both okay, and I'm glad to be back.
My heart goes out to people if you are, because we have a lot of listeners from this city, and just our hearts go out to those who lost their homes.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Just an unfathomable tragedy.
Yeah. Another tragedy followed shortly after.
David Lynch.
Yeah.
God, why do we have to start this?
This is the saddest episode ever.
Yeah, I wish this wasn't true. I wish this was a sick joke. We also lost David Lynch, the iconic filmmaker. And again, people like to throw the word around genius or whatever, but truly David Lynch is of a very small group of actual geniuses.
Like real visionary.
Who changed the world.
Yeah.
And not just film.
Yeah.
Even changed music, It's hard to imagine what popular culture looks like without David Lynch.
Definitely. And even because I told you before we started recording that I am in the middle of Twin Peaks, and it's like, without Twin Peaks, what is the detective show on TV?
Well, what is prestige TV at all?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, there were detective shows before Twin Peaks, but I just feel like, especially when you're watching it now, it's just like you realize that so many shows, probably everything you watch is influenced by it.
Every showrunner, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's like a joke at this point where every showrunner is like, oh, Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm a huge David Lynch fan, like so many people. But yeah, if you listen to our episodes on Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet, you can hear a little more about it. But yeah, it feels like we lost someone that was immortal. And he is immortal through his work. But yeah, I haven't been this shook since I think David Bowie died, where it's just like someone died that you never thought would die.
Yeah.
And they're just so ingrained in the fabric of who we are that it's just crazy to think that he's gone.
I know.
But yes, David Lynch has died. So, hey, listen, I guess we have to move on. I don't know. It's really sad.
I think he probably loved the movie Today. I'm going to go out on a limb.
He probably did. I think he was a Fritz Lang fan, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just such a wise, and people keep posting so much from his weather reports and just all the fun behind the stuff that clips and stuff, and his master class, and it's just what a wise and just loving person. You just get that vibe from everything, from his work and from these clips that show us who he was, and it's just it's nice to have those. Like they've never like comforted me as much, like when someone has passed, as much as they are now. Like all these clips that people are posting of him just talking. Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah. I think it's, a lot of, quote unquote geniuses in the arts can have a reputation for being difficult people. And David Lynch is just such a pure soul.
Exactly. Which is so, you would be surprised because he's so cool. Like he's so cool. He looks really cool.
Yeah.
And his film's obviously incredibly cool. But him just loving, like I just get such a loving feeling watching him.
He said one of the things too, I mean, he said so many wise things, but one thing that has always stuck with me is he was such a proponent for being happy in your everyday life, because he's like, this myth of like the tortured artist, like no, like if you're miserable, like you can't create.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to work on yourself. You need to be a well-adjusted, like happy person to create art. And I so agree with that. And
me too.
It's so true.
Me too.
But yeah, have you been to Bob's Big Boy since?
I haven't. I was going to ask you.
No, I haven't been yet, but there's a shrine there.
I went to Bigfoot Lodge for a David Lynch night.
Yeah, how was that?
A few nights ago. Really fun. They were playing Twin Peaks episodes on the wall and like projecting it, and they were playing music. Like I think it was just like a David Lynch playlist. And it was really fun. It was really nice. There was a girl there, shout out if you're listening, don't know who you are, dressed in plastic. Like she was like the body of Laura Palmer.
Wow.
And her hair was like slicked back and she had this plastic wrap dress on. And it was crazy.
Wow.
So shout out if you're listening.
It's been the kind of thing, sometimes when someone passes, you kind of immerse yourself in their work. I think because I'm in denial, I haven't really been able to watch or listen to any David Lynch stuff. Because I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really want to right now.
Take your time.
It's like acknowledging why you're focusing on it right now is because he's gone.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, there's someone like him, there's not enough words to be said. It's just it's a monumental loss that we will never recover from. I think a lot of people kind of ape his style to usually much lesser results, and there's only one true original. It's like I did meet him very briefly when Inland Empire came out, and he was super nice. And I was a fan at a signing, and said, I was like 20 at the time, 19, 20, and just like babbled for like 20 seconds about how much his work meant to me. And he was gracious and shook my hand and smiled. And that was it. But it was nice.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. Well, I guess normally this is where we do like, what have you been watching? But I feel like we've already taken up a bunch of time.
Say something.
I'll just say the one I saw recently was the new Mike Leigh Hard Truths,
which I didn't even know was out.
Yeah, this is a thing. I've told a bunch of film friends I'm seeing this, and they're like, "Wait, what? Mike Leigh has a new movie? Yeah, he has a new movie. Go check it out."
How was it?
It was great. It was classic Mike Leigh.
Great,
because his last couple have been like period things, and it's been a while since he's just done like a really typical like Mike Leigh suburban kind of dramedy that cheapens it by calling it a dramedy, but that's what it is. But it's great.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Watch more Mike Leigh. You know what? Because I think we talked about Nosferatu last time a little bit. I did see Nosferatu.
Yeah. What'd you think?
I really enjoyed it.
Did you?
I really, really enjoyed it.
Huh.
I don't know. Like, I think he did bring something new to it. And I'm not just talking about the mustache. Like, I think that, I don't know. It was the first Dracula movie I've seen where I was like genuinely disgusted. Like, that's never happened to me before. Grossed out. Like, he's nasty.
Yeah.
So I was impressed. And I was impressed with Lily Rose Depp. I thought she did a great job.
I thought she did a good job.
No. But yeah.
Nice.
Should we get into M?
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of disgusting.
Speaking of disgusting in a different way.
Horrible acts.
Yeah.
Yeah. What year is this? 1931.
Yeah. 1931. And this movie, by the way, is number 56 on the 2012 list and number 36 on the 2022 list. So it has jumped up 20 spaces.
Wow. Okay. From 1931. This is Fritz Lang's M.
was released in 1931. It was directed by Fritz Lang, written by Lang and Thea von Harbou. Cinematography by Fritz Arno Wagner. The film has no score. In Berlin, little Elsie Beckman is walking home from school when a man approaches her and offers to buy her a balloon. Her mother anxiously awaits her at home, but Elsie becomes the latest victim of a child serial killer looming large over the city. Mass mania rises as the police make little progress despite countless raids following every lead presented to them. Eventually, a group of gangsters led by the Safecracker, who find their business affected by increased police activity and surveillance, decide to catch the pedophile themselves using their network of criminals and peddlers. The police finally identify the murderer as Hans Beckert and wait for him at his apartment. Meanwhile, the blind balloon seller who sold Beckert the balloon for Elsie recognizes his whistling nearby. He tells a friend who follows Beckert as he tries to abduct another child. The man draws the letter M on his hand in chalk and marks Beckert's coat with it while passing by. The network of beggars tail Beckert and the child until the little girl points out the letter on Beckert's coat and he flees, realizing he's being watched. He hides in an office building after closing hours, and the gangsters break in to hunt him down. One of the building's watchmen manages to sound the alarm, but the criminals capture Beckert right before the police arrive. They take him to an abandoned distillery where they hold a trial. A debate ensues about what to do with him. The Safecracker states that if they turn him into the police, Beckert will simply plead insanity and be institutionalized on taxpayer dollars. He might even be released after being deemed cured. Beckert pleads for his life, claiming that he truly can't help himself, that the compulsion to kill is an illness beyond his control, and that he is tortured by his own actions. Just as the crowd is about to kill him, the police arrive on the scene, having been informed by one of the gangsters left behind in the office building. The film closes on Beckert's official sentencing. Before we can hear the verdict, one of the victim's mothers urges all parents to keep a closer eye on their children. The film stars Peter Lorre as Hans Beckert, Otto Wernick as Inspector Karl Lohmann, and Gustav Gründgens as the Safecracker. The film was made during an explosive time in German history. It was the last days of the Weimar Republic. Mass media was on the rise, obsession with crime and murder. We see actually in the delivery of the cereal to the Beckman house. Remember that like newspaper that gets dropped off or like magazine? Mm-hmm. It's like a crime cereal. The debate in the Weimar Republic about the death penalty and the rise of psychiatry was also kind of in the background while this was made. Lang was denied studio space at Staken Studios because the owner was a Nazi and assumed the original title, Murderer Among Us, implied the film had anti-Nazi sentiments. After hearing the plot, Fritz Lang was allowed to use the studio. M marks Fritz Lang's first sound picture. It's also the last collaboration with his wife at the time, the writer Thea von Harbou. They separated after the film and she joined the Nazi Party. After M, the last film Lang made in Germany was The Testament of Dr. Mabuse. Actually, Inspector Lohmann is a recurring character in that one. After its release, Joseph Goebbels wanted Lang to head the film portion of propaganda in Nazi Germany, but he refused and he fled to France. The film was released, M, not the Testament of Dr. Mabuse. M was released with a secondary title, A City Searches for a Murderer. So it was M, A City Searches for a Murderer, which I wonder why like didn't hold. Like, why didn't that stick?
Kind of like Sunrise, a song of two humans.
Yeah. Hans Beckert is heard whistling Edward Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King. And eventually the song is his demise. This was the first instance of a leitmotif being used in a film, which is just like a recurring theme for a character. So even though it doesn't have a score, like that's kind of like his, it was the first time like a specific song was used for a character. Peter Lorre couldn't whistle, so that's actually Fritz Lang dubbing his whistle. Lang and his wife denied it, but many critics think that the film is inspired by a real-life serial killer, Peter Kürten, or the Vampire of Dusseldorf. He was said to attempt to drink the blood of his victims, but Lang said it's based on like a bunch of serial killers, not just him. The criminals of the underworld are mostly inspired by real people. They're based on ring clubs at the time, which were gangs that operated during the Weimar period. gangsters with a strict hierarchical structure, and they saw themselves as guardians of society's values. And they actually did give financial support to the wives of jailed members. They mentioned that in the movie. In the US, it played in German with English subtitles for 2 weeks. Then it was pulled from theaters and replaced with an English language dub. And Peter Lorre actually reprises his role in the dub. It got mixed reviews on release, but now is unanimously praised. The 109-minute version, which I'm sure you watched on Criterion, was not available until the year 2000. The film premiered at 117 minutes, and then it was cut to 98 minutes in 1960. There's a remake set in Los Angeles in 1951. There's an Argentinian remake from 1953. There was a radio adaptation in 2003 and an audience interactive play in 2015. So it's the audience would turn into the jury at the end.
Huh.
And there's also an Austrian-German miniseries from 2019. And this was Fritz Lang's favorite film of the films that he made.
That's very sensible.
Yeah. Great movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm giving my initial thoughts away, but we've reached that portion of the show.
We have.
Who wants to go first?
Was this your first time seeing it?
No, this was my second.
When did you first see this?
I don't remember.
Really? A long time ago?
No, maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I really liked it on the first time around. This time around, I was in love. I was okay, this is amazing. Just I was just blown away by how tight and modern and creepy it is. I think it's still relevant. I mean, we talked about Twin Peaks, right? For TV, how it set the format of TV dramas afterwards. But I think that this movie M is still relevant in the format for any serial killer movie. Just intercutting between the cops and the criminal, which we still use today. And the way everything matches and cuts together is so great. We meet so many characters in this city, but it all just runs so smoothly. And we'll talk more about how he accomplishes that. And just this we're all in this together attitude that I love so much. I mean, there's always movies where the bad guys are working with the cops, but was this the first one?
I don't think so.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But in this one this one's interesting because the bad guys are genuinely this guy is evil, and we are not, and we want to separate ourselves from this guy. And of course, we'll talk about the whole debate at the end and what's going on there, which is just crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm also to have this be your first sound movie is incredible.
Yeah.
So I really love everything going on with the sound in this movie. And also just the amount of restraint. We don't see him kill any kids, but it is so chilling. And he even said, he's that's I don't have to show the horrible thing. You audiences are smart enough. They know that. He even said they know that the children are being raped. I don't even have to say it. So yeah.
Heavy.
I know. Because there is, I remember there's one line where it's the way they found them or something and what he did to them. So.
Yeah. It's definitely implied.
And doesn't have to show it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. It's an incredible movie. I think I first saw this, it was right after high school. I think I was even in high school and some friends and I watched it. And the first thing I was immediately struck by was the leitmotif of the whistling of in the Hall of the Mountain King, because it seems like such a modern thing to do. Uh-huh. It's just, this movie is incredibly ahead of its time.
So ahead of its time.
I think too, the more movies I watch, and especially from this era, the more I'm in love with this movie because it makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
And Fritz Lang he'd had experience doing this kind of thing before with Mabusa the Gambler. So he made 3 Mabusa films. The first one was Mabusa the Gambler, which is a full-on silent film several years before this. And that deals with similar kind of things, but to do it in sound, and because I think the 30s is a really interesting time for film. I think the first few years of the sound era could be really clunky. Some movies do not know how to handle the transition. And then others are like up and running like this. And there are sections of this that don't have sound, but it's like he uses sound so well.
Even the lack of sound he uses so well.
Yeah. And the fact that this is like Peter Lorre's big debut, it's the birth of an icon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, it's like every serial or sort of, crime serial after this is 100% pulling from this.
Yeah.
Like the blueprint is here and it's perfected. And like he makes it seem effortless the way he's cutting between the mobsters, the cops, Peter Lorre, also his virtuosic camera. Like the camera is doing so much beautifully.
Yeah.
It's pushing in.
It's amazing.
There's that one sequence where the inspector's thinking about the cigarettes, Ariston cigarettes or whatever, and every time he says it, the camera pushes in a little more to him. It's little things like that which could be showy, but like work so well in the film. Yeah. The cameras, there's it's moving through windows. There's literally a scene where it moves through a window, and I've seen David Fincher do that, except Fincher does it digitally. Here it obviously has to be done practically. There's just a lot of elaborate setups in this camera wise. It's just like the city feels alive. The camera is like, it knows when to accentuate a detail that you need to know. It knows when to hold back and assume that the audience is piecing it together. It's just funny because it respects its audience.
Yeah.
And it never holds your hand through this. And it's just a brilliant movie. I think it'll always be timeless.
I totally agree. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. And I think too, like we've done one other Fritz Lang film on the show, and it was Metropolis. Yeah. A film that I remember loving. And we both went to it and we were like, it's impressive, but it's a mess. And just a couple years later to do this, which is the opposite of Metropolis. It's like you said, it's tight, it's contained, it's lean. It has a lot on its mind. I think the message of Metropolis, like the connection between the heart and the hand or some shit. Yeah. In this movie, it's really like, because this could have just been a hunt for a serial killer, right? Like it could have just been this tense, like, oh, we're going to catch Peter Lorre and he's doing these terrible things. But you get that whole last act with the kangaroo court, which apparently Fritz Lang said a lot of those people were actual criminals in that final scene.
Yes.
Because they're on the disc. There's a really great interview with William Friedkin, like William Friedkin interviewing Fritz Lang in 1975, a year before Fritz Lang died. And you get a lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, the fact that this movie goes far enough to then humanize this child rapist murderer. Like the film goes, wait, what's making him do this?
Exactly.
Is incredibly bold. And I think even for now, movies would kind of be afraid to humanize him.
100%. And I think that wild card that is thrown at you during that kangaroo court is, I can't wait to talk about it. Because I love that part.
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, I want to talk about Night of the Hunter.
Yeah. Your favorite.
Okay. When it started and it's just the kind of pre-lap of the kids playing and singing that awful song, my mind immediately went to Night of the Hunter, right? Of course, in M, there are no floating kid heads. It's just,
Is that a dig?
There are no sermons on like kids' heads floating in the stars. So definitely this is more effective in my book. But
tread lightly, Jackie.
But definitely reminded me of it, even like with the killing. And totally, like you said, I mean, even in Night of the Hunter, right, we hate him. We hate him the whole time. We don't.
Yeah, the movie doesn't humanize him. Well, because Night of the Hunter is told, of course, from the kid's point of view, it's a fairy tale.
Definitely. I'm just saying, when the movie started, immediately my mind went to Night of the Hunter. And I was like, oh, yes, okay, now I remember. And this is clearly influenced. And I mean, but, of course, very different. Like in the killing, like in Night of the Hunter, when they first discover the legs of the woman, like the first death that the kids discover, there's like crazy dramatic music, right? And of course that's melodrama, the snot, but the stillness of this movie, the opening of this movie is it's honestly, it might be my favorite part, is like the first 10 minutes, like the Elsie Beckman.
Beckman.
That might be my favorite part of the movie. It's just like the ball against the poster and his shadow, and it's like, oh, come on, like it's beautiful. And her mom, and the anxiousness and the when it cuts to like the empty staircase and her empty place at the table and the empty laundry room. And,
yes.
Oh my
Those images are so loud.
Amazing. And they're just still images, no music. The mom every now and then is like, Elsie. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
It really gets me, the beginning of this. And then there's the balloon and the electrical wire, which is a little funky, like because I think it's like a manipulated, like I don't think it's a real shot. Like I think they like overlaid the balloon onto a shot of
okay.
Because the balloon is huge.
Right.
The size ratio, like the ratio of the balloon to the wires is not normal, right? Am I the only one who caught that?
I didn't I don't know. I didn't think funky, anything of it.
Still very moving. So I just love that quiet opening. But yeah, it did remind me of Night of the Hunter. I had to put that out.
Yeah, well,
very
it is
different
for sure. Charles Lawton saw this.
Yeah,
but it's like the movies, like this is like a hard-boiled crime story, whereas like Night of the Hunter is a children's fable kind of thing.
Yes.
But yeah.
Which, just to be clear to everyone listening, I like Night of the Hunter. I think it's a good movie. No, I do. But let's talk about, because this is, again, like we talked about this in our initial thoughts, and I think this is what makes this movie so special and how it created a format, is just the way the movie paints this picture of the city with so many different moving parts and people, and it's like almost divided into little vignettes. Some of them are recurring, some of them are just one-off. But it's a wonder, and like it's all done with matching. It's like it's match cuts or it's match sounds, honestly. And again, that's why I think this is an incredible first sound movie, to use sound as like a matching device. Incredible, like you really using it for a purpose. Because when sound came out, like people of course were like losing their shit and they're like, we don't need this. But it's like it's truly using it for a purpose the whole time. The way it just like merges and melts these vastly different scenes together, like. The first one, and it's this whole sequence, right? It's kind of the beginning part when we're learning like the murder has just happened, and then it's like the mass mania arising. So it sounds from like, it starts from sounds from a crowd reading the newspaper, right? Some guy's like, we can't read it. Someone read it aloud. Someone's in the front reading the newspaper posting. But that sound, like whatever they're reading, then turns into the sound of the men who are just sitting at a bar and reading the paper themselves. But like the actual sound itself changes in the middle of it to the men, and then we're with the men, right? And then they start accusing each other, and he said, like, the guy that's being accused says, like, he calls this guy a slanderer, and then from slanderer cuts to that house being investigated, right? Where they're also saying you're a like, what is the slander?
Yes.
Someone's house being investigated, right? After that guy was just accused. And then from there, the person who's like investigating is like, anyone on the street could be the killer. And then we go to the street, and there's the old man where the little girl goes up to him and asks for the time, right?
Yeah.
So that perfectly melted. And then when they all attack the old man, they're like, someone get the police, officer. Then we cut to a completely different scene of someone saying officer to the officer that is arresting a pickpocketer.
Yeah.
So it all is like, it's perfect.
Smooth.
That whole sequence is like a perfect cut after the other, matching the scene before, either like the shot or the sound. And it's really, really amazing.
You almost don't even notice it because it's so smooth.
I know. I had to rewind it. I'm like, whoa, like what is going on?
Yeah.
And then the pre-lap, he does a lot with pre-laps here. Again, like using the sound. It's the handwriting analysis, right? And they're saying like, they're talking about how psychopathic he is. And of course, like we start to see him at his house making faces in the mirror.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then with the gangsters, when they're having their meeting, and Safecracker goes, I invite, and then it cuts to the police having their meeting, and it's the police chief saying, your views, gentlemen.
Yeah.
So it's like mid-sentence, they're finishing each other's sentences in different places.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's like, what is he saying about the mob being the same as the police?
Yes. It's so good. And then the police, when they finally go to his apartment, right? And they see that he was using the windowsill to write his letters. And they go, we're finally on his trail. And then it cuts immediately to the criminals on the phone who are like, what? You're on his trail?
Yeah.
After they've marked him with the M.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I know.
It's so perfect. Like, it's like a perfect sequence of events.
Yeah, it's dizzying.
Yeah.
And you're right. The city feels so alive. It's important too, like Weimar Germany. Like, this is the era of cabaret and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of seedy.
It's the seedy,
place.
like like danger's on the horizon, and to make a movie about murder, like, yes, it's like, I mean, we'll talk about that.
It's wild. It's wild that this movie was made when it was, because it's dealing with such heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is not kidding around. It's dealing with it in a somber adult way.
Yeah.
And also a very like matter of fact way.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he's killing these children and like molesting these children. It's insane that this came out when it did.
It is insane. It is insane.
But I think too, it's a testament to the place and time that they're making it.
I'm surprised that this was even allowed to play in the US, honestly.
Well, it's pre-code.
Oh, yeah.
I think the code
When did the code come?
It was like 32, I think. Someone could correct me. 32, maybe 33.
But yeah, I mean, let's talk again, just like the use of sound and the whole metaphor of the whistle. And like, that's the key to catching him, of course. And it's like, to make your first sound movie all contingent on that sound, like, great, amazing.
Why do you think In the Hall of the Mountain King?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Do you have any thoughts? I know that I didn't think about it.
Maybe it's just a catchy tune.
Maybe.
An easily recognizable tune. And I think there's something about that, not knowing the story behind it, really. There's something about it musically that symbolizes, because that song like builds and builds. Yeah. And it's kind of ominous, but kind of playful. And so it's this interesting, you can't quite get a feel for it.
Right. You know what they should have done? And now I'm kind of jumping forward, but don't you think like when they were really cracking down and they like almost got him, and they were like going to the candy shops and asking like, you know, did you see a guy buy candy? Don't you think they should have just told all the candy stores, if you see a guy with a kid who clearly isn't his, call us.
But that might be harder to suss out, I think.
You can tell though, like when it's your kid or not. And they're calling him Mr. Can I have Mr.? So like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That
would have been my 2 cents if they asked me.
I think we should put you in a time machine and send you back so you can advise on that. I love to like the way the shop windows. So like, first of all, the toys in those window displays look so cool. Like I was looking at those toys, I'm like, I want that.
Window displays in Europe are like an art.
And also just thinking about when toys were like well made, like all those things look really sturdy and
built
well put
last.
together. Yeah, built to last. Exactly.
Yeah.
I got a toy.
Oh, what about the...
I was just going to say I got a toy train for Christmas. I mean, I bought it to put under the Christmas tree. And it was like,
yourself a toy.
I bought myself a toy and it was a really cheap one, but like it got stepped on in the, the fire evacuation stuff. And no, it's broken.
Oh, no.
But if it had been, it was cheap, but like if it had been a toy from this movie, you can bet it would still be standing.
Yeah. Did you have a toy train growing up?
Not really, no.
My brother had a Lionel train.
Right, a Lionel.
It was cool.
Yeah, that's like really the gold standard, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And he had these droppers that you put in the train, so it like... Boop, boop.
I had that too.
Really cool.
Yeah, you could. They sell some pretty cheap ones now. Although again,
Lionel
you step
trains?
on them. No, it's not Lionel. But they still have like the steam thing, and it's cool.
Yeah.
But
we had one. This is you can cut this, but there was a dropper that he had that was like for Christmas time, and it smelled like cinnamony gingerbread. Like it was really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, my brother had cool toys. But yeah, I mean, what about, because we talked a little bit about the camera and how it is doing some really, really amazing stuff. My favorite, I mean, not my favorite site. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard to choose, but I was really taken aback by a few really long shots in this movie. Like, do you remember when they're raiding that bar and everyone's running out of that tunnel, but the camera doesn't cut, and then everyone runs back because the cops are there and they're dragging that one lady who was like the first one to run.
Yeah.
And then it just like stays in the stairwell. Great, beautiful moment. And then there's also what about that, like the hangout of like the beggars and the peddlers?
Yeah.
That's all one shot. Like it starts with one guy looking at cigars. Like it starts from this close up of cigars and then pulls out and goes through the whole freaking room.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. There's
it's
lots of
really cool.
Yeah. And then I think he's like really having fun with the camera here too. There's a scene where Lohman, the police inspector, is sitting at his desk, but the camera's at his feet.
His crotch.
At his
it's
crotch.
like looking at his crotch.
It's almost like under his desk, looking up at him, and he's like looming over this frame.
What is this shot?
I just love that he's going for it.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it kind of makes him look repulsive too.
Yeah. And then there's also the close-up of the map. You know, like the map, and then they're like making the radius bigger.
Yes.
And I love that stuff too.
No, all of that, all of the procedural details are like just spot on.
Yeah. And then of course the great shot, like when he's at his like kangaroo trial?
Kangaroo court.
Kangaroo court. Who came up with that?
I don't know. Someone.
When he's at his kangaroo court and he just looks around the room, and that beautiful pan as well.
Yes.
That one's crazy. Yeah. And then also in that scene, the balloon guy, like he feel like there's a hand on his shoulder, and then it like pulls out and it's the balloon guy, and then he's like, recognize this, and he pulls the balloon and it's all one shot.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's so
I mean, we should have known this was in him. Like the silent era for Fritz Lang was incredible. Like, and again, problems with Metropolis aside, like it's a stunning film.
Yeah.
And like we should have known that he could apply all of that circus stuff.
Totally.
Like to a more pared down economical story and use it really well.
Exactly. And it's like these directors who were all, you know, from that era and were making silent films, like they had to learn how to tell stories purely visually.
Yes.
And so like to see that come in, and also him using sound so perfectly, like I think that's what makes this movie so special.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking too while I was watching this, I was like, would this work with no sound at all? I'm like, it technically would. Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing you would lose is the whistling.
The whistling, but also the whole debate at the end.
I agree.
Like, the debate at the end is very important.
I agree. That's probably the moment where, you know, but leading up to then, it's so well told visually.
Yes.
Like with all the details and stuff that like you almost don't need it. But
also sound is kind of that's what gives him away. Like,
that's what gives him away. No,
I like how it's built on that.
Yeah.
Like I like how it's built in this way of like, I'm going to use visuals as much as possible, but I'm also going to use sound to like cut everything together and mix it all together, and also as like the key to giving him away. Like, I love that. And then of course the debate at the end. But
how do you? Yeah. Oh, no, are we going to talk about the debate?
Are we gonna?
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to bring that up.
Okay. Let's talk about him. Let's just talk about Hans Beckert and this whole debate and his character.
In the interview with William Friedkin on the Criterion disc, Friedkin asks, like, was it intentional that you made him sort of sympathetic? And Fritz Lang seems to be struggling with that.
Wow. Like he felt that he did and he didn't want to, or he just wasn't sure.
He wasn't sure how it came off, or he didn't intend to necessarily. But it's like, he's so. I feel for the guy.
I mean, like, listen. There's this scene when he's looking in the shop window for knives. You mentioned the shop window.
Yeah.
He's looking at this knife display and he sees the reflection of a little girl behind him, and he becomes like physically uncomfortable, and he has to like take a breath and like compose himself. And it's like that all happens, but then like when you hear him at the end talk about how it's like an affliction and how he hates himself and all this, like you think back to that scene and you're like, wow, like he's struggling there. Yeah. And he like goes and has to get himself a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, a cognac or something.
Oh yeah, cognac. Yeah. Sorry, he decides on a cognac. But I don't feel for him until the end scene.
Well, of course,
and even then, like you become so confused. But that's what I mean. Like you look back at that scene and you're like, oh wow. You become so confused with yourself. You're like, wait a second. Like, do I feel bad for this person? And am I supposed to? And it's just such a good question and such a debate to like pose on your audience.
Well, because they designed him to be committing the worst crimes imaginable, crimes against children. Like there's nothing
even
worse.
The criminals are like, this guy has to go.
Yeah.
Like he's giving us a bad name.
But I think it's a testament to Peter Lorre's performance and the writing of the film that it's not like you feel bad for him, but it's like you get some glimpse into what he's struggling with.
Exactly.
And
do I think that he can help it? No, not really. I think he's sick. Like I think he is very, very sick. And like I don't know. But then arises the whole, because of course this was made like right before the Nazis. Then arises the whole question of like, okay, can Hitler help it? Like,
right.
So then it's like you're thinking about all of these things, and that's looming in the background. And are mass murderers to be dismissed as mentally ill or criminals? Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't believe in the death penalty. So like, if it were up to me, it's like just lock him up and make sure he's never released.
But
they of course pose but he can be released if he pleads insanity. But I don't think that happens now. Like, I think
you'd be surprised.
Wait, actually?
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Like, some people are committed and then let out. Like, people who've committed like heinous acts are like institutionalized and then eventually released.
See, I think if you do anything that can be labeled heinous, you should be like either in an institution for the rest of your life with no chance of ever returning to society.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, it's like, it's just so complicated. And this movie addresses all of this stuff. And it like you said, like addresses them being like, oh, but if he pleads insanity, he could get out later and he'd be on the streets again. And like, these are problems that we still wrestle with now.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, really.
There isn't.
And I feel like I'm not obsessed with the movie the way that some people are, but Clockwork Orange kind of deals with some of that too, of like, can someone be reformed? And in the reform, are you doing more harm than good? And it's like, are some people just inherently bad?
Totally. And I think about this a lot because I think about like kinks, right? Like people have a lot of...
That's like you wrote a book on those, right? That's like your main subject.
Kinks.
Every time I see you, like, Greg, have you heard about all these other kinks I found out about? I'm like, no, tell me, Jackie.
But I think about how some people are lucky that and this is fucked up and this is like a very dark thought, but like... this movie makes you think that. It's like, what's to say, like, some people are lucky to get like a normal kink, right? I say that in quotes. And then some people are pedophiles. Like, that's fucked up. Like, that's crazy.
The human brain is a complex thing.
I know. And the fact that we're like talking about this based on a movie is
I think
crazy.
If you have a kink that doesn't harm anybody else, it's generally considered okay.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But like, how lucky are some people to have quote quote normal ones, and then how unlucky are people to have sick ones? Like, see, but then it's this whole debate. It's like, are people born evil, or do they have evil thrust upon them? Like, it's
because we don't know much about his background in this movie.
No, but he gets a postcard from a person named Paul.
Right.
Who is Paul?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe his brother.
Also, can I just say, do you like how that like fake defense lawyer they gave him just for show just pulled a fast one on his guys?
Yeah.
Like on his friend. Those are his friends, right? And he's like, guys, watch this. He's like, oh, you thought this was going to be a walk in the park? Well, I'm down to have fun today. Like, let's do this. You know, because like what? That's just one of their guys, right? Being his, quote, defense lawyer.
Yeah.
And then he just pulls this fast one.
Yeah. Well, he saves him.
Kind of. But no, it looks like they're going to kill him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the court at the end.
But we don't hear what the verdict is.
We don't hear what the verdict is.
Yeah.
Well, and then you have that last shot of the mother crying.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
I know.
No, that's crazy because when he's in the kangaroo court, a hand goes on his shoulder. You assume it's the police because everyone in there puts their hands up, right? Then you cut to the court like sentencing, but you don't know what it is. And then it cuts to the three mothers crying. Yeah. And the mother being like, it's a sad day for children or something. So did he get off?
Oh.
Is he institutionalized?
No, I never thought about that. I thought it was just, I never thought it was posing that, like, by her saying it's a sad day.
Because she does say that, right?
Question of like, did he? I don't remember. I watched this like before the fires because I thought we were going to record.
I know. I watched it last night. I have no excuse. I'm pretty sure she says it's a sad day for children, but he could still be sentenced to life, and she could still be saying that in terms of like,
he should be killed. Yeah.
Yeah. So he leaves it open there.
That is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we see murderers get off all the time. Look at OJ. I mean, look, there's lots of people who have gotten off.
Yeah.
You know.
See, the thing is, this whole like, people always joke, like, not joke, but like, there's always this thing, right, of like, there's a pedophile list, right? Or there's a sex offenders list. And it's like, if you get your name on that list, you're like blacklisted. Why do we even have that list? These people shouldn't be allowed out. Like, that's my thing. It's like,
yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, you're talking about crimes against children specifically.
Yes,
Yeah.
like these people who are like, I'm not allowed to go to a park. I mean, I don't know anyone like that, but there's that
You
thing. There's that.
That's
thing.
like all your friends.
And a lot of the time, it's like used in comedy. I feel like where it's like, oh, this person can't be near a park because
Big
they're
Lebowski.
right. So
John
it's like,
Turturro.
why are those people even out?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
but that is
that's played for laughs. Yeah,
that is played for
No, I agree. I mean, it's like, and it's scary. I don't know what the website is, but you can go on that website and you can see all the sex offenders that live in your neighborhood.
They shouldn't be
They're
allowed
all
to be
over the
out.
place.
Like,
They're all over the place.
I don't
But the
know.
difference is there's a sliding scale of
I suppose.
severity.
I suppose.
And it's like you can get on that list, and I'm not trying to defend anyone on there at all, but I'm saying there's a difference between like a 25-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old, which still is like not okay, but technically considered statutory rape if it's consensual, but also technically
It's-
not consensual if she's underage. But that's still like, that's gross.
Yeah.
But then someone like abusing a child is like
Yes.
another level
that
of...
exactly
But yeah, I agree that they shouldn't be walking around.
right.
But then it's like you see what it costs to like incarcerate someone for the rest of their
And
life.
that's
It's
what the criminals were
expensive.
saying. They're like,
Yeah.
we're just going to use our dollars.
Which is crazy. I mean, it's just, who knows what the answer is? We're still struggling with these things as a society.
Totally. And the fact that this movie can cause so much self-reflection in you while watching it. It was made like almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, that is what's so amazing about this movie. Amongst everything else we've talked about, that also is what makes this movie exceptional.
Yes. And it's like, it's a very watchable movie.
Oh, so it's entertaining.
It's entertaining, but it's really deep and it has a lot on its mind and it's nuanced. And we were just talking about how a lot of people today, like the thinking is very black and white.
Mm-hmm.
The two extremes. And it's like this movie offers this gray scale of like, make up your own opinion. And I just think that's like really refreshing.
I agree. Did you know that the Nazis used the clip of Peter Lorre's confession in their propaganda? So there's a film called The Eternal Jew that claimed that Jews carry inherited mental illness, such as the insanity that Peter Lorre's character has in this movie. And they used the clip from this movie in that propaganda film. Fritz Lang didn't even know about it. Isn't that insane?
That's great.
Like to take that and use to weaponize that like that?
Yeah, that's insane.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, and they wanted Fritz Lang to make propaganda for them, which is
Yeah.
crazy. And he got out just in time. Peter Lorre is buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Is he really?
I wish it wasn't Hollywood Forever. I wish he was like Forest Lawn or something.
Yeah. Hollywood Forever's kind of far.
All the tourists go there.
Yeah.
Like that's the one.
I know.
I think I've seen his grave actually. He was only 59 when he died.
Oh.
But it's like his resume, insane. Just between this, Mad Love, Maltese Falcon, Crime and Punishment, Casablanca, Arsenic and Old Lace. So many great things.
too.
Around the World in 80 Days.
Also talk about like the
20,000
original.
Leagues.
Yeah, talk about the original like actor typecast as a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. Bad guy / like
Kind of dumb bad guy.
Well,
like
yeah.
not dumb, but like not a mastermind. Like
Sometimes he
kinda like
is.
a
Have you seen
pawn.
Mad Love?
no.
He's good in that. A pawn or like also the slippery friend.
Yeah.
Like because he is Rick's friend in Casablanca,
Casablanca,
but
yeah.
you never know. Like, can I trust this
Yes.
guy?
Yeah. He's also in the original Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yes, the original.
Which I
yeah.
haven't seen.
Me either. Me either.
Yeah. Should we do Sight and Sound?
Let's do Sight and Sound. What's your favorite sight?
You know, it's kind of really hard to choose.
It is.
But if I had to nail it down, I think it's something from the Elsie sequence at the start. I think it's the empty seat. The empty seat, like her mom set up like the table for her and she's supposed to come home from lunch and I think it's that.
Mine is related, and you mentioned it, but it's the balloon against the telephone wires.
Right.
It's so powerful.
Yes.
Like that is the shot when you're like, she's dead.
Yeah. And then the ball coming out of the
Yep. Yeah.
See, if it was Night of the Hunter though, it'd be like prom prom prom.
I'm not smiling, Jackie.
Don't deny it. But it's the quiet of that sequence that makes it work so well.
Yeah, there's a lot of quiet in Night of the Hunter too, but yeah, Night of the Hunter is a bigger, more dramatic movie. Yes. I feel like you're pulling a me today. We're like, I fixate on one thing. And I'm like, no, this is better than that other thing.
Yeah, I am.
The roles are reversed.
I am. But that's what's so great about doing this podcast is you learn what you like more and you learn what's more effective to you.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy. I'm just sharing.
It's funny because in my mind, they're both 5 out of 5s. Like this and Night of the Hunter are both great. They're different approaches entirely.
Right.
But I think both are equally as valid. But yeah, it's right. Sometimes you favorite one or the other. Like this is more my style. That's not as much. But yeah.
Yeah. Sound. This was hard for me actually.
Yeah.
Even though I talked about how much I love the sounds in this. But it's like I'm not going to choose a random match cut as my favorite sound.
Right.
I think I'm going to go with Mrs. Beckman again.
Oh, yeah, at the end?
No. Is she the one at the end that says the final line?
So
it's probably her. I can't imagine it. Who else do we know as who would be as effective as her?
Right.
No, it's the beginning because the way she's saying Elsie is like it starts like very just like Elsie, and then at the end she's like worried. So it's very sad, but here it is.
Elsie. 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 Elsie.
Yeah. The sense of dread that this movie instills.
In the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. I know. Wow.
That's like even like Zodiac, the first 10 minutes is the murder, right? One of the murders.
Yeah.
I feel like most like serial killer movie, they all open with like a murder.
I think there's a very direct line between this and Zodiac is the modern movie equivalent that I kept thinking of.
Definitely. Especially with the letter to like, oh, the newspaper doesn't want to publish my letter.
Yeah.
Or like, here it is. Yeah.
And I thought too, Jack the Ripper, because Jack the Ripper would do that. He would send letters into the paper and yeah.
Also, you know what else I love about this? Sorry, I don't want say your favorite sound and then I'll mention it.
No, you mention it first.
So people always talk about like, oh, like there wasn't times used to be safer and like kids could play outside and it wasn't like this and those were the good old days. People always say that, mostly my grandmother. But
my grandma says it too.
This movie just goes to show like, no, honey, like this has been around. Like that it really demystifies the whole like halcyon, like good old days.
I think there is some truth to like this was an anomaly. I do genuinely think that depending on the time and place, right? But my grandma, who grew up in California in the 30s and 40s, talks about it too, of just being like, yeah, there was stuff happening, but like you could leave your kids to kind of go do their own thing and you never really had to worry. Whereas now we've entered, I think, especially the last 20 years with like the mass shootings and stuff, like this country is so unsafe now in a way that like, that stuff was not happening then. Like mass shootings every week.
Right.
Where like 20 people were getting killed in a nightclub or a school or whatever was not the norm.
For sure. But yeah,
stuff was still going down. Yes.
It's like that's like the whole thesis of No Country for Old Men. Too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's your favorite sound?
It's the whistling.
It's the whistle. The whistle's so good.
Yeah.
Good one.
Good one. It's really ingenious. You can imagine someone like Tarantino, assigning something like that to one of his characters, and the fact that 1931, it's like this whistle is associated.
Think about harmonica in Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, it's exactly the same idea. Yeah. Pauline.
Yeah.
All right. Here's what Pauline Kael had to say. All right. She said, Fritz Lang's first sound film has visual excitement, pace, brilliance of surface, and feeling for detail. Above all, it has, caught in a manhunt, a small fat man sweating in his uncomfortable clothes, the sexual psychopath who murders little girls, interpreted by Peter Lorre with a spark of genius. It is Laurie's triumph that he makes us understand the terrified, suffering human being who murders. The film is based on the case of the Dusseldorf murderer. The police, in trying to track him down, disturbed the normal criminal activities of the city, and the underworld organized to find him so that crime could go on as usual. Lang turns the movie into a melodramatic thriller by centering on this ironic chase, actually on the two converging chases of the police and the underworld. The structure is so mechanical, it's almost pulpy, and the film reaches for other easy effects. It's similar to the Threepenny Opera in its satirical use of beggars and criminals. But there's nothing facile about Laurie. Trapped by the underworld, he screams, "I can't help myself." Our identification with him as a psychopath is so complete, it's hard to believe that while appearing before Fritz Lang's cameras in the daytime, he was, at night, acting as a comedian in a farce.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost like, you know, they say that sometimes like comedians make the best dramatic actors, and then you think back on like really terrifying roles where like people were known for comedic stuff, like the Bishop in Fanny and Alexander, or like Robin Williams did some stuff like that 1 hour photo movie where he was really creepy. And I think it's true. Like I think comedian, there is like this fine line of like, you can, you know.
Yeah.
I agree with all of her points.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. We didn't even talk about like the office break-in. It's great.
Yeah. It's great.
Not to be.
You mentioned it
not
in
to
your
be
synopsis.
Simple, but I think that the way it's done is great, and I love the shot of when they catch him in the storage unit, and like he's hiding, and then like the flashlight hits him. Like it's so good.
And even before the flashlight, it was actually almost my favorite sight. His wide eyes as he's realizing he's about to be caught. Because they're about to leave, and they're like, no, let's look through the rest of these storage containers. And they're breaking down the doors, and he knows. He's like, this is it.
Yeah. His eyes are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he famously said he went to Bela Lugosi's funeral, I think with Vincent Price or something, and he told whoever he was with, while looking at Bela Lugosi's dead body, like in a, you know, open viewing, like, should we drive a stake through his heart or something?
That's so funny.
Yeah. Letterboxd?
Yes. Well, it's funny because just 2 seconds ago I said his eyes are crazy, and there's a 4-star review that says, man, those are some big eyeballs.
Yeah, I saw that one. Half a star. I could not finish this movie. Unapologetically slow.
Slow.
Sounds like someone whose brain has been rotted by TikTok.
Oh no, TikTok's back, by the way.
It's back.
Someone gave it 4 stars and said, I can't whistle, so I could kill kids and get away with it, probably.
That's dark. Half a star. Average film everyone thinks is good, but it isn't really.
Wow.
Sure. Well, maybe the problem is you.
Someone gave it 1.5, saying, didn't finish. Felt it was over dramatic and boring. How can it be over dramatic and boring?
Yeah, what the fuck?
I mean, I guess it can, but it's definitely not.
No. This movie's not fucking boring.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry. If you're bored during this, what? 4.5 stars. Incredible how ahead of its time this film was. It would take decades for filmmaking to catch back up with half the stuff that's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2 stars. Should have named this movie L for Loser. Oh, man.
That's what
good.
I got. I had a longer one here that's like a 5-star, but I'm like, we already said all this.
It.
Yeah, this was M. This is Fritz Lang's
Very
M.
fun.
We've now covered his 2 most famous films on the show with Metropolis and this.
Have you seen Human Desire?
No.
I really want to.
That's him?
Yeah.
He did a lot of stuff. Is that like in the 40s or 50s?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think 40s.
He did a lot of stuff that he kind of became really inconsistent. Like, so he would have some great later movies like The Big Heat and stuff like that, but then would do, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting career. The Big Heat's good. Oh, you're talking about Human Desire. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it. His silent work is unparalleled. I mean, he did the Nibelungen films, these like gigantic fantasy epics. So it's important to know where he is at this point in his career. Like he's made huge movies. Metropolis, huge. He's made sprawling crime stuff with Mabusa the Gambler and stuff. So it's like, but M really does feel like, I know we talk about this a lot on the show, but I think that's why a lot of these films are on this list. M feels like the culmination of everything he'd kind of done, perfected.
Yes.
I guess it's not it is huge scale in the sense that it's about this entire city.
And a lot of characters.
Yeah, a lot of characters. It's juggling a lot at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
It's great. And I'm glad it bumped up 20 places on the list.
Yeah. I mean, this is one, I think this does both the thing, sometimes we talk about films on this show that were really important to the evolution of filmmaking, but don't necessarily stand up now as like a great watch. And I think the thing about M is it remains a great watch, and it's a super, super important film.
Definitely.
So it's kind of like the complete package.
I agree.
But yeah, this is M.
This was M.
This is great. I think it's a testament to, we've talked about this before, but like I was not in the mood to watch this last night. I had run out of time. I got off work and I was like, well, gotta watch this tonight. And I was not feeling it. Also in my head, this was like a 90-minute movie, but it's like actually 2 hours or just under 2 hours. And I was like, fuck, okay. So I like put it on and then, but then before you know it, you're like,
I mean, that beginning sequence.
Swept away by the filmmaking. Yeah, absolutely. So great film, masterpiece.
Yeah.
Should always be on the list.
I agree. And I think it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope.
I mean, Metropolis should fall far off before this like moves at all.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Again, not that we hate that movie, but it has its problems.
I just don't really like the theme of that movie. Like,
the theme
I don't
is
like
trash.
what it's saying.
Yeah, the theme is trash.
It looks good.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in it, but
yeah.
Anyway, next week we're coming back with some Kiarostami. We're coming back with Close Up, which is an essential. So looking forward to revisiting that.
I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
I know, I'm really excited. I was waiting. I was going to watch like a bunch of his stuff before, I don't know, it was like a few months ago. And then I was like, I think it's coming.
Oh, have you seen anything? Oh, it's your first Kiarostami.
Wait, no, I've seen Thing.
Taste of Cherry?
No.
Where's the Friend's House?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice. That's a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
That whole trilogy is incredible.
There's a trilogy?
The Coker trilogy.
Oh.
Yeah, Criterion even has a box out.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's great. It's a masterpiece. So yeah, come back next week for our first Kiarostami on the list.
Very excited.
Until then, I'm Greg.
I'm Jackie.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Special thanks to the patrons at our highest tier, John Pennington and Cynthia Fordwell. Seen and Heard is an official podcast of the Arroyo Film Club. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line, you can find us on email at hello@seenandheardpod.com or on Instagram @seenandheardpod.